The millionaire CEO waited in the lobby every day, but the shy maid never noticed his gaze. Before we explore all the details of this incredible story, tell us where you're following us from and the time. Subscribe to the channel so you don't miss a thing, and let's embark on this journey together. She walked through the marble lobby like a ghost who had forgotten she was already dead. Sierra Bennett pulled her worn backpack higher on her shoulder, earbuds creating a protective barrier between her and a world that had taught her to stay small. At 25, she had perfected the art of invisibility. Head down, steps quick, eyes fixed on the polished floor that reflected everything except her own worth. The Meridian corporate tower stretched 43 floors into the Atlanta sky, each level representing dreams she'd never dared to claim. Sierra belonged to the shadows, the early morning hours when executives were still sleeping off their expensive wines, when she could clean their world without disturbing their illusions. Her sneakers squeaked softly against the marble as she made her way toward the service elevator, the same path. Every morning, 5:47 a.m. sharp. What she didn't know was that someone had been timing her steps. 38 floors above, Nathaniel Dorian stood at his corner office window, watching the street below come alive. As CEO of Meridian Urban Innovations, he controlled millions in development projects, hundreds of employees, and boardrooms that shaped city skylines. But for the past 3 months, his morning routine had changed. Instead of diving straight into market reports, he found himself taking the executive elevator down to the lobby. Not for meetings, not for coffee, for her. The woman with the tired eyes and gentle grace who moved through his building like she was apologizing for taking up space. He'd never spoken to her, didn't even know her name. But every morning, watching her cross that marble floor had become the most honest moment of his day. "Mr. Dorian?" His assistant's voice crackled through the intercom. "Your 7 a.m. with the Phoenix Group is ready to begin. Reschedule it," he said, already reaching for his suit jacket. Something more important came up. Sierra paused at the elevator bank, digging through her backpack for her employee card. Bills from overdue medical appointments crinkled against textbooks she studied during lunch breaks. Community college nursing prerequisites that represented hope she barely allowed herself to feel. Behind her, polished shoes clicked against the marble. She glanced up briefly. A tall man in an expensive suit, the kind who probably made more in a day than she did in a year. She looked away quickly, the way she'd learned to do. People like that didn't see people like her, and that was safer for everyone. But if she had looked a moment longer, she would have seen the way his steps slowed, the way his breathing changed, the way he watched her with the careful attention of someone memorizing something precious. The service elevator dinged softly. Sierra stepped inside, pressing the button for the basement level where supplies and second chances lived. As the doors began to close, she caught a glimpse of the man still standing there, looking directly at her. Their eyes met for exactly 3 seconds. Her heart did something strange, a flutter she hadn't felt since before life taught her that feelings were luxuries she couldn't afford. She pressed herself against the back wall of the elevator, confused by the intensity in his gaze. Nathaniel felt the world tilt. Those eyes, tired but unbroken, guarded but still impossibly kind. In 3 seconds, she had shown him more truth than he'd seen in 3 years of corporate negotiations. The elevator doors closed, taking her away, but the feeling remained. That evening, Sierra sat at her small kitchen table, helping her 15-year-old sister Zara with algebra homework. Their cramped apartment held the weight of grown-up responsibilities that had fallen on Sierra's shoulders too young. Utility bills spread across the counter, a refrigerator held closed with duct tape, dreams deferred but not abandoned. "Sierra?" Zara looked up from her textbook. "You seem different today. I don't know. Like you saw something." Sierra's pen paused over a nursing practice quiz. The image of those intense eyes flashed through her mind, the way he had looked at her, not through her, but directly into her. "Just tired, baby girl," she said softly. But as she touched the spot over her heart, where that 3-second moment still lived, she wondered if some part of her had been holding its breath for years. And today, for just a moment, she had remembered how to breathe. Tomorrow, she would walk through that lobby again. Same time, same path. What she didn't know was that tomorrow, everything would change. Because the man who had been watching her every morning had finally decided to do something about the way she was rewiring his carefully controlled world. Have you ever felt completely invisible to someone, only to discover they've been watching you all along? What would you do if you found out that the person you thought was out of your league had been timing their entire day, around just seeing you walk by. The coffee in Sierra's thermos had gone cold, but she kept sipping it anyway, a small act of rebellion against a world that rarely gave her warm things. 5:46 a.m., 1 minute earlier than usual. She stood outside the Meridian Tower, watching the city wake up through glass doors that cost more than her yearly rent. Atlanta's morning traffic hummed in the distance, a soundtrack to dreams deferred and bills overdue. Inside the lobby, Nathaniel adjusted his tie for the third time. He'd been standing there for 10 minutes pretending to check emails on his phone while his heart hammered against his ribs like a teenager waiting for prom. This is insane, he thought. You run a billion-dollar company. You've negotiated with senators and celebrities, and you're nervous about seeing a woman whose name you don't even know. But when Sierra pushed through those glass doors, when that familiar backpack settled on her shoulder and those tired eyes swept the marble floor, Nathaniel felt something he hadn't experienced since his father left when he was 12, the desperate need to be noticed by someone who mattered. Sierra's routine faltered for just a moment. The man from yesterday, the one with the intense stare, was standing near the elevator bank, not waiting for an elevator, just standing there. She tried to look away, but something about his posture seemed different today. Less corporate armor, more human uncertainty. He was holding his phone, but his thumb wasn't moving across the screen. He was still, waiting. Don't be ridiculous, she told herself. Rich men don't wait for cleaning ladies. But as she approached the service elevator, she could feel his presence like heat from a fire, dangerous and warm at the same time. Excuse me. His voice was softer than she expected, with a slight rasp that suggested he didn't sleep enough either. Sierra's hand froze on her employee card. She turned slowly, keeping her eyes fixed somewhere around his chest, safe territory that wouldn't get her in trouble. Yes, sir? I'm Nathaniel, he said, and she could hear him swallow. Nathaniel Dorian. The name hit her like cold water. Everyone in the building knew that name. It was printed on paychecks, whispered in break rooms, feared in performance reviews. The man who owned their world was standing 3 feet away, knowing her schedule better than she did. I'm Sierra, she whispered, because lying to a billionaire seemed like a bad career move. Sierra. He repeated her name like he was testing how it felt in his mouth. I was wondering, do you always come in this early? The question was innocent enough, but something in his tone made her stomach flutter. Sierra finally looked up, meeting those eyes that had haunted her dreams. I have to, sir. The cleaning schedules. Nathaniel, he interrupted gently. Please, just Nathaniel. She blinked. In her world, powerful men demanded titles, respect, distance. They didn't ask to be called by their first names by women who scrubbed their toilets. I don't think that's appropriate, she managed. A smile tugged at the corner of his mouth, not the polished grin she'd seen in corporate photos, but something real and slightly crooked. Maybe not, he agreed. But I've been watching you walk through this lobby for 3 months, and I think we're past appropriate. The confession hung in the air between them like smoke. Sierra felt her cheeks burn with embarrassment and something else, something that felt dangerously close to hope. You've been watching me. Every morning, same time, same place. His honesty was brutal and beautiful. I told myself I was just getting coffee early, checking the building security, reviewing overnight reports. But I was lying. The service elevator dinged behind her. Sierra glanced back at it, then at Nathaniel, caught between escape and something that felt like destiny. Why? The words slipped out before she could stop it. Because, he said, stepping closer, in a building full of people trying to impress me, you're the only one who doesn't even see me, and somehow that makes me want to be seen by you more than anything. Sierra's breath caught. This was the stuff of movies, of romance novels her sister left scattered around their apartment. This wasn't real life. Not her real life, anyway. Mr. Dorian, Nathaniel, she corrected softly, and his whole face lit up like she'd given him a gift. I think you have me confused with someone else. You're just the woman who crosses this lobby every morning at 5:47 a.m., carrying textbooks in a backpack that's seen better days. You're just the woman who stops to pet the stray cat by the loading dock when you think no one's looking. You're just the woman who works 2 jobs and still finds time to smile at the security guard when he looks like he's having a rough night. Sierra stared at him, stunned. He'd been watching her, really watching her, in ways she hadn't even noticed herself. How do you know all that? Because, Nathaniel said quietly, I've been trying to figure out what makes someone so beautiful without even trying. The elevator doors closed behind them with a soft whoosh, another one would come. But right now, in this marble lobby that had witnessed 1,000 corporate deals and power plays, something entirely different was happening. Sierra felt something crack open in her chest, a place she'd kept locked since the last time someone had made her believe she was worth seeing. "I should go," she whispered. "I'll be late." "Sierra," he called as she reached for the elevator button. She turned back. "What if I told you that watching you walk through this lobby is the best part of my day?" Her heart did that strange flutter again, stronger this time. She looked at this man who commanded boardrooms and city skylines, who was looking at her like she held secrets to mysteries he'd been trying to solve his whole life. "Then I'd say you need better days," she said softly. But as the elevator doors opened and she stepped inside, she was smiling, and for the first time in years, Sierra Bennett felt like someone worth watching. Sierra couldn't concentrate on anything. Not on the way disinfectant burned her nostrils in the 32nd floor bathroom, not on the stack of unpaid bills waiting at home, not even on the nursing textbook she'd propped against the supply cart, trying to study between toilet scrubs. All she could think about was the way Nathaniel had said her name, like it meant something. "What if I told you that watching you walk through this lobby is the best part of my day?" She shook her head, squirting more cleaner into the marble sink. Rich men said things like that. It didn't mean anything, it couldn't mean anything. But her reflection in the bathroom mirror looked different somehow, less invisible, more alive, like someone had turned up the brightness on a photograph that had been fading for years. Her phone buzzed. A text from Zara. "Rent notice came today. Need $200 by Friday, or they start eviction process." The flutter in Sierra's chest died instantly. Reality had a way of crushing fantasies before they could take root. She finished the bathroom and moved to the next office, pushing her cart down halls lined with awards and achievements that belonged to people who'd never worried about eviction notices. Through floor-to-ceiling windows, she could see Atlanta spreading out below, a city full of dreams she couldn't afford to chase. It was nearly noon when she found it, tucked under the handle of her supply cart, folded in expensive paper that felt too good for her rough hands. A note. Sierra glanced around the empty hallway, heart hammering. No one left notes for cleaning staff, ever. They left complaints, demands, occasionally thank you cards during the holidays, but not notes. Not like this. She unfolded it carefully. "I hope your morning was gentler than mine. I kept thinking about what you said, that I need better days. You're right, but meeting you yesterday was the first good thing that's happened to me in months. Thank you for reminding me what hope feels like." N. At the bottom, in smaller handwriting, "P.S. There's a coffee shop on 5th Street called Magnolia's. They make the kind of coffee that stays warm. If you ever want a break from cold thermoses, I'll be there tomorrow at 6 p.m. No pressure, just hope." Sierra read it 3 times, her hands trembling slightly. This was insane. Billionaire CEOs didn't ask cleaning ladies to coffee shops. This was the kind of thing that got people fired, gossiped about, humiliated. But underneath her fear, something else was blooming. When was the last time someone had noticed she drank cold coffee? When was the last time someone had cared enough to offer her something warm? She folded the note carefully and slipped it into her uniform pocket, right over her heart. That evening, Sierra sat at their tiny kitchen table, staring at nursing school application forms while Zara practiced violin in the next room. The sound was beautiful and haunting, something their mother had insisted on before the cancer took her voice away. "Sierra?" Zara appeared in the doorway, violin tucked under her arm. "You've been weird all day, weirder than usual. Thanks for the ego boost, baby girl." "I'm serious." Zara settled into the chair across from her. At 15, she had their mother's intuition and their father's stubbornness. A dangerous combination. "You keep touching your pocket like there's something important in there." Sierra's hand moved instinctively to the note. "It's nothing." "Uh-huh?" Zara raised an eyebrow. "Nothing doesn't make you smile like that." "I don't smile." "You're smiling right now." Sierra caught her reflection in the microwave door. She was smiling. A soft, secret smile she hadn't worn since before life taught her that hope was a luxury they couldn't afford. "Someone left me a note today," she admitted. "Ooh." Zara leaned forward like she was watching her favorite drama. "What kind of note? Like a complaint note or a you're cute note?" "The second kind, I think." Sierra pulled the note from her pocket, smoothing it on the table. "But it's complicated." Zara read it silently, her eyes growing wider with each line. "Sierra Bennett," she whispered. "A man asked you on a coffee date. A man with really nice handwriting. A man who notices that your coffee is cold and wants to buy you warm coffee. It's not a date, it's just—" Sierra paused, What was it exactly? It's just coffee. With someone who signs notes with a single letter like he's some kind of mysterious romantic hero. Zara grinned. This is the most exciting thing that's happened to us since Netflix raised their prices. Zara, be serious. Look at this note. This paper probably costs more than our groceries. This man lives in a different world. So, maybe he wants to visit yours for a while. Sierra looked at her little sister, barely 15 but wise in ways that broke her heart. Zara had watched Sierra sacrifice college plans, social life, dreams, everything to keep them afloat after their parents died. She deserved to see her big sister happy, even if it was just for one cup of coffee. What if I go and make a fool of myself? What if you don't go and wonder what if for the rest of your life? That night, Sierra lay in bed staring at the ceiling, the note on her nightstand like a small flame in the darkness. Tomorrow at 6 p.m., Magnolia's on 5th Street. She thought about Nathaniel standing in that marble lobby, confessing that he'd been watching her for months. She thought about the way he'd said her name, the way he'd looked at her like she was something precious he'd been searching for. She thought about rent notices and nursing school applications and all the reasons this was a terrible idea. But mostly, she thought about what it would feel like to drink coffee that stayed warm. And for the first time in years, Sierra Bennett fell asleep, planning what to wear to something that might, possibly, be the beginning of everything changing. Sierra changed her clothes 4 times. The faded jeans made her look too casual. The black dress made her look like she was trying too hard. The sweater had a small hole near the left elbow that seemed to grow bigger every time she looked in the mirror. Finally, she settled on dark jeans and a soft blue blouse Zara had given her for Christmas. Nothing fancy, but clean and comfortable. The kind of outfit that said she cared without pretending to be someone she wasn't. "You look beautiful," Zara said from the doorway, holding her violin case. "Nervous, but beautiful." "I look terrified." "Same thing sometimes," Zara grinned. "I'm walking to Mrs. Patterson's for my lesson. Try not to have a panic attack while I'm gone. No promises." Sierra watched her sister disappear down the hallway, then stared at herself in the bathroom mirror one more time. Her reflection showed a woman who cleaned offices for a living, who worried about rent money, who had calluses on her hands from scrub brushes and industrial soap. What was she doing? This was Nathaniel Dorian. He probably ate at restaurants where her monthly grocery budget wouldn't cover an appetizer. Her phone showed 5:42 p.m. If she was going to do this, she needed to leave now. If she was going to do this. "What if you don't go and wonder what if for the rest of your life?" Zara's words echoed in her head as Sierra grabbed her jacket and stepped into the Atlanta evening. Magnolia's Coffee sat on 5th Street like a warm secret tucked between a used bookstore and a vintage clothing shop. Through the large window, Sierra could see exposed brick walls, mismatched furniture, and the kind of lighting that made everyone look like they belonged in a romantic movie. She stood across the street for 5 minutes, watching people come and go, students with laptops, couples sharing desserts, a man reading a newspaper in the corner booth. No sign of Nathaniel. Maybe he'd changed his mind. Maybe this had been some kind of elaborate joke. Maybe. "Sierra?" She turned and nearly collided with him. Nathaniel stood on the sidewalk behind her, looking nothing like the polished CEO from the corporate tower. He wore dark jeans and a grey sweater, his hair slightly messy from the evening breeze. He looked normal, approachable, human. "I wasn't sure you'd come," he said softly. "I wasn't sure either." The honesty slipped out before she could stop it. His smile was different from the ones she'd seen in business magazines, slower, more genuine. "Well, I'm glad you did. Should we?" He gestured toward the coffee shop, and Sierra nodded, not trusting her voice. The bell above the door chimed as they entered. The scent of roasted coffee beans and cinnamon filled the air, mixing with the soft murmur of conversations and acoustic guitar music playing overhead. "What can I get you?" Nathaniel asked as they approached the counter. Sierra studied the menu board, acutely aware of the prices. Even coffee shop prices seemed steep when you were counting every dollar. "Just a regular coffee," she said. "Black." "The caramel macchiato looks good," Nathaniel suggested gently. "I'm fine with black coffee." He gave her a look that said he understood exactly why she'd chosen the cheapest option. "2 caramel macchiatos," he told the barista, "and whatever pastries you recommend." "I said black coffee," Sierra protested quietly. "I heard you, but I also noticed you haven't eaten anything since this morning." "How could you possibly know that?" "Because I've been paying attention," he said simply. "And because I know what it looks like when someone's too busy taking care of everyone else to take care of themselves." The words hit harder than they should have. Sierra looked away, blinking back the sudden sting of tears. When was the last time someone had noticed whether she'd eaten? They found a small table by the window. Nathaniel waited until she was seated before sitting across from her, like his mother had taught him manners that money couldn't buy. "Thank you," Sierra said quietly, wrapping her hands around the warm mug. "For the coffee, for noticing. Thank you for coming. I wasn't sure you would. Honestly, I almost didn't." She took a sip of the macchiato and nearly sighed. It was perfect, sweet and warm, and everything her thermos coffee wasn't. "This feels like a mistake." "Why?" "Because you're you, and I'm me, and those two things don't usually go together." Nathaniel leaned forward, his expression serious. "What if I told you that me includes someone who grew up in a trailer park in South Carolina, someone who ate government cheese and shopped at thrift stores until he was 25? Sierra blinked. "I'd say you're lying. My mother cleaned houses for a living. My father left when I was 12. I got where I am through scholarships, student loans, and working 3 jobs through college." He paused. "Money changes your address, Sierra. It doesn't change who you are inside." She studied his face, looking for signs of deception, but his eyes held the same tired recognition she saw in her own mirror, the look of someone who'd fought hard for everything they had. "Why are you telling me this?" "Because I want you to understand that when I look at you, I don't see someone beneath me. I see someone who reminds me of the best parts of where I came from." The coffee shop bustled around them, but Sierra felt like they were sitting in a bubble of honesty that made the rest of the world fade away. "Can I ask you something?" she said. "Anything. Why me? You could have anyone. Models, lawyers, women who wear designer clothes and know which fork to use at fancy dinners." Nathaniel was quiet for a long moment, turning his mug in his hands. "You want to know what I see when I watch you walk through that lobby?" he finally said. "I see someone who treats the security guard like he matters, someone who stops to pet a stray cat even when she's running late, someone who studies nursing textbooks during her lunch break because she believes in something bigger than herself." Sierra's chest tightened. "I see strength without arrogance, kindness without agenda, beauty that doesn't require makeup or designer clothes or any of the things the women in my world think they need." He looked directly into her eyes. "I see everything I've been looking for without knowing I was looking for it. The coffee shop, the conversations, the music, everything faded until there was only this moment, this man, this feeling of being truly seen for the first time in her life." "Nathaniel," she whispered. "Yeah? I think I'm in trouble." His smile was soft and understanding. "The best kind of trouble." Sierra looked at this man who'd grown up like she had, who'd fought for everything like she was fighting, who saw her worth when she could barely see it herself. "Yeah," she said quietly. "The best kind." Sierra floated home on a cloud of caramel macchiato and possibilities. The evening air felt different somehow, softer, full of promise instead of just exhaust fumes and distant sirens. She replayed every moment of their conversation, the way Nathaniel's eyes had lit up when she laughed, the way he'd listened to her like her words actually mattered. "I see everything I've been looking for without knowing I was looking for it." Nobody had ever said anything like that to her. Ever. She was still smiling when she climbed the 3 flights to their apartment, keys jingling in her hand, but the smile died the moment she opened the door. Zara sat at the kitchen table, violin forgotten beside her, tears streaming down her face. In front of her lay a stack of official-looking papers and an envelope marked "Urgent" in red letters. "Zara, baby girl, what happened?" Her sister looked up, with eyes that looked far too old for 15. "Mrs. Patterson called. She can't give me lessons anymore." "What? Why?" "Because we haven't paid her in 2 months." Zara's voice cracked. "She said she understands, that she knows we're struggling, but she has bills too." Sierra's heart sank as she sat down beside her sister. The violin lessons weren't just music to Zara. They were her connection to their mother, who'd played professionally before marriage and children, and cancer changed everything. "We'll figure something out," Sierra said softly, though she had no idea how. "That's not all." Zara pushed the papers toward her. "The eviction notice is official now. We have until Monday to pay everything we owe, or they start the legal process." Sierra scanned the documents, the numbers blurring together. Rent, late fees, utilities, court costs. It added up to more money than she made in 3 months. "How much?" she whispered. $1,800. The coffee shop warmth drained from Sierra's body, replaced by the familiar chill of panic. $1,800 might as well have been 18 million. "I can get extra shifts," she said, thinking out loud. "Maybe pick up some weekend cleaning jobs if I work every day for the next month." "Sierra," Zara's voice was gentle but firm. We don't have a month. We have 4 days. They sat in silence, the weight of impossible mathematics crushing the air between them. Outside their window, Atlanta glittered with lights, each one representing someone who didn't have to choose between rent and food, between keeping their home and keeping their dignity. Sierra's phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. "Thank you for tonight. Sleep well. N." The message should have made her smile. Instead, it felt like salt in a wound. Here she was, texting with a billionaire about their perfect evening, while her 15-year-old sister cried over violin lessons they couldn't afford. "Who's that?" Zara asked, noticing the phone. "Nobody," Sierra said quickly, turning the phone face down. But Zara wasn't fooled. "It's him, isn't it? Coffee shop guy?" Sierra nodded reluctantly. "How was it?" "It doesn't matter now." "Of course it matters. Just because we're broke doesn't mean you can't be happy." "Zara, no, listen to me." Her sister's voice grew stronger. "You've been taking care of me since I was 12. You dropped out of nursing school to work double shifts. You haven't bought yourself new clothes in 2 years. You deserve one good thing, Sierra. One person who makes you smile." Tears burned behind Sierra's eyes. "What kind of person am I if I'm thinking about romance while we're about to be homeless?" "You're human," Zara said simply, "and you're allowed to be human." That night, Sierra lay awake, staring at the water stain on the ceiling, her mind racing through impossible scenarios. She could ask for advances on her paychecks, but that would just create bigger problems next month. She could try to get a loan, but her credit was already stretched thin from medical bills after their mother's cancer treatment. She thought about Nathaniel's confession over coffee, the way he'd understood exactly why she'd ordered the cheapest thing on the menu. For a moment, she allowed herself to imagine telling him about the eviction notice, about Zara's violin lessons, about the crushing weight of trying to be strong enough for 2 people. But she knew what would happen. He'd offer to help, because that's what good people did when they had resources, and someone they cared about was drowning. And then what? She'd become his charity case, his pet project, the poor girl he rescued from her sad little life. Every touch, every kiss, every "I love you" would be tainted by the knowledge that she'd been too weak to save herself. Her phone buzzed again. Another text from Nathaniel. "I know it's late, but I can't stop thinking about what you said, about being in trouble. I meant what I said. The best kind, sweet dreams." Sierra read the message 3 times, her heart breaking a little more with each word. This man who'd grown up poor, who understood struggle, who looked at her like she was precious, he was falling for someone who didn't really exist. Because the real Sierra Bennett wasn't mysterious or intriguing. She was desperate. She was 3 days away from eviction. She was a woman who might have to choose between pride and homelessness. She typed and deleted a dozen responses. What could she say? That she was falling for him too? That tonight had been perfect until reality came crashing back? That she wanted to be the woman he thought she was, but she wasn't sure she was strong enough? Finally, she settled on, "Sweet dreams to you too." It wasn't enough, it wasn't honest, but it was all she could manage without falling apart completely. As dawn crept through their thin curtains, Sierra made a decision. She would see Nathaniel again. She was too far gone to stop now, but she would keep her disasters to herself. She would be the woman he'd fallen for in that coffee shop, the one who was strong and graceful under pressure, because some secrets were too heavy to share, even with someone who looked at you like you held all the stars in the sky, and some kinds of trouble were too complicated for love to fix. Sierra's hands shook as she counted the crumpled bills for the 3rd time. $247. That was everything. Her last paycheck, the emergency money hidden in an old coffee can, even the quarters from Zara's piggy bank that her sister had silently contributed without being asked. It wasn't enough. It wasn't even close. She sat on the bathroom floor at 3 a.m., back against the door, trying to muffle her sobs so Zara wouldn't hear. In 6 hours, she had to walk into that marble lobby, smile at Nathaniel like her world wasn't crumbling, and pretend she was the composed woman he'd fallen for at Magnolia's. Her phone lit up with another text. "Good morning, beautiful. Thinking about you already. Can I see you today?" Sierra stared at the message until it blurred. This man who made her feel like she could fly was asking to see her on the day she might lose everything. The irony was almost funny, if anything about this situation was funny. She typed back, "Working double shift today, rain check?" It wasn't entirely a lie. She was working. She'd picked up extra hours cleaning a law office downtown, desperate for any additional income. but mostly she couldn't bear the thought of looking into his eyes while carrying this secret. The law office was sterile and cold, all glass and chrome, and the kind of expensive minimalism that screamed success. Sierra moved through the empty halls like a ghost, vacuuming carpets that cost more per square foot than her monthly rent. "Excuse me." She turned to find a woman in her 50s watching her, perfectly coiffed silver hair, designer suit, the kind of confidence that came from never having to count quarters for grocery money. "Yes, ma'am? You're doing an excellent job. Very thorough." The woman's smile seemed genuine. "I'm Helena Ashworth, senior partner here. I don't think we've met." "Sierra Bennett. I'm covering for the regular crew today." "Well, Sierra, I have a proposition for you." Helena stepped closer, her voice dropping to a conspiratorial whisper. "I'm hosting a charity gala next weekend. Very exclusive, very important people. I need someone I can trust to help with the event setup and cleanup. It pays well." Sierra's heart jumped. "How well?" $500 for the weekend. Cash. $500. It wasn't enough to save them, but it was something. A small breath of air before she drowned completely. "I'll do it," Sierra said quickly. "Wonderful. I'll have my assistant send you the details." Helena paused, studying Sierra's face. "Are you all right, dear? You look like you haven't slept." The kindness in her voice nearly broke Sierra's composure. "I'm fine, just tired." "We all are, honey, we all are." That evening, Sierra sat at their kitchen table helping Zara with calculus homework when the knock came. 3 sharp raps that made both sisters freeze. "Are you expecting someone?" Zara whispered. Sierra shook her head, dread pooling in her stomach. Landlords didn't usually knock at 8 p.m. unless something was very wrong. She opened the door to find their building manager, Mr. Hendricks, holding a clipboard and wearing the expression of a man who hated his job. "Evening, Sierra. Sorry to bother you, but we need to talk." "About what?" "About the fact that I have strict orders from the property management company. Since you haven't responded to the payment demands, they're starting legal proceedings tomorrow morning." The words hit her like a physical blow. "Tomorrow?" But the notice said Monday. That was the final notice for voluntary payment. "Tomorrow they file with the courts." His voice softened slightly. "Look, I like you girls. You're quiet. You don't cause trouble. But I can't stop this train once it starts rolling. How long do we have? Once they file? Maybe a week before the sheriff shows up with eviction papers." Sierra felt the walls closing in. What if I could get you half by Friday? Would that stop the process?" Mr. Hendricks shook his head sadly. "Has to be everything, plus court fees." "I'm sorry, Sierra. I really am." The door closed with a soft click that sounded like a gavel falling. Zara appeared beside her, violin case in her hands. "I'm selling it." "What?" "No. It's worth at least $800. Maybe more if I find the right buyer." "Zara, that violin is all we have left of Mom. Mom would want us to have a place to live." Tears streamed down her sister's face, but her voice was steady. "Besides, what good is a violin if I can't afford lessons?" Sierra pulled Zara into her arms, both of them crying now, quiet, desperate tears that tasted like giving up. "There has to be another way," Sierra whispered. But even as she said it, she knew there wasn't. Not legally, not with dignity and tact. Her phone buzzed against the kitchen counter. Another text from Nathaniel. "I know you're working, but I couldn't help myself. Had to tell you that yesterday was the best day I've had in years. You're incredible, Sierra. Sleep well." Sierra stared at the message, her heart breaking into smaller and smaller pieces. Here was a man who could solve all their problems with a single phone call, who was falling in love with her, who looked at her like she was everything good in the world, and she was lying to him. About everything. She was lying about being okay, about being strong, about being the kind of woman who had her life together enough to deserve someone like him. The truth was, she was 3 days away from being homeless. The truth was, she was so desperate she was considering letting her baby sister sell their mother's violin. The truth was, she was falling apart, and no amount of caramel macchiatos or gentle words could fix the crushing weight of real life. "Sleep well too," she typed back, each word feeling like a betrayal. Because how could she sleep well when tomorrow she had to wake up and pretend to be someone she wasn't? How could she look into Nathaniel's eyes and smile when her whole world was collapsing? And how could she keep falling in love with a man she was lying to about everything that mattered? As Zara finally fell asleep, clutching the violin case like a lifeline, Sierra made another decision. She would work Helena's gala this weekend. She would smile and serve and clean up after rich people who spent more on champagne than she made in a month. And then, somehow, She would find the courage to tell Nathaniel the truth, even if it meant watching him walk away from the mess her life had become, because some secrets grew too heavy to carry alone. The last thing Sierra expected to see at Helena Ashworth's charity gala was Nathaniel Dorian in a black tuxedo, holding a champagne flute and looking like he belonged in a magazine. She froze in the mansion's marble foyer, silver serving tray trembling in her hands. Around her, Atlanta's elite mingled in designer gowns and expensive suits, their laughter mixing with the sound of a string quartet. Crystal chandeliers cast warm light over everything, making the scene look like something from a fairy tale where she was definitely not the princess. Sierra was dressed in the standard catering uniform, black slacks, white button-down shirt, hair pulled back into a severe bun. She'd been working for 3 hours, refilling champagne glasses and clearing appetizer plates, invisible to the wealthy guests who treated servers like moving furniture. Until now. Nathaniel stood 30 feet away, deep in conversation with a man she recognized from business magazines. He looked incredible. The tuxedo fitted perfectly to his tall frame, his dark hair styled just enough to look effortless. This was his world, she realized. These were his people, and she was the help. Sierra? Helena appeared beside her, looking concerned. You look like you've seen a ghost. Are you all right? I'm fine, Sierra managed, though her voice sounded strange even to her own ears. Just surprised by how beautiful everything looks. It does, doesn't it? Though I have to admit I'm more proud of the cause than the decorations. We're raising money for literacy programs in underserved communities. Helena followed Sierra's gaze across the room. Do you know Nathaniel Dorian? He's one of our biggest donors. Of course he was. Sierra felt something crack inside her chest. Not personally, she said quietly. Wonderful man. Self-made, you know. Started with nothing and built an empire. The kind of success story that gives us all hope. Helena squeezed Sierra's arm gently. Keep circulating with those champagne glasses, dear. The evening's just getting started. Sierra nodded and moved deeper into the crowd, hoping to avoid Nathaniel's section of the room. But fate, or maybe just the natural flow of a party, kept pushing her closer to where he stood. She was refilling glasses at a nearby table when she heard his laugh, rich and warm, the same sound that had made her stomach flutter at Magnolia's. Against her better judgment, she glanced over. He was talking to a stunning blonde in an emerald green gown that probably cost more than Sierra's annual salary. The woman touched his arm while she laughed at something he'd said, her diamond bracelet catching the chandelier light. Sierra's throat tightened. This woman belonged here. She spoke the same language of wealth and privilege, probably had the same education, the same background. She was everything Sierra wasn't. Polished, sophisticated, secure. More champagne? Sierra found herself asking the group, professional smile plastered on her face. Thank you, the blonde said without really looking at her, then continued her conversation. Nathaniel, you simply must tell me about your new development project. I heard it's going to revolutionize downtown Atlanta. Sierra reached for Nathaniel's empty glass, her hand steady despite the way her heart was hammering. For one terrible moment, their fingers brushed as she took the champagne flute. He looked up. Their eyes met across the small distance between server and guest, and Sierra watched recognition dawn on his face like sunrise, beautiful and devastating all at once. Sierra? His voice was barely a whisper. The blonde looked confused. I'm sorry, do you two know each other? Sierra felt the weight of every gaze at the table, the curiosity and judgment of people who lived in a world where servers didn't have names, much less personal relationships with billionaire CEOs. No, Sierra said quickly, her voice steady though her hands were shaking. I must remind you of someone else, sir. Excuse me. She turned to walk away, but Nathaniel's voice stopped her. Sierra, wait. The desperation in his tone made her freeze. Around them, conversations quieted as people sensed drama unfolding. I think there's been a misunderstanding, the blonde said, her voice sharp with curiosity and something that might have been territorial instinct. Nathaniel stood up abruptly, his chair scraping against the marble floor. Excuse me, Vivian. I need to speak with someone. Nathaniel, really? Vivian's laugh was brittle. She's working. Whatever it is can surely wait. No, he said firmly, his eyes never leaving Sierra's face. It can't. Sierra felt the room's attention like a physical weight. 100 pairs of eyes watching the billionaire CEO chase after the serving girl. She could see the wheels turning in their minds. Was this some kind of scandal? A situation that would provide gossip for weeks? Please, she whispered, don't do this here. But Nathaniel was already moving toward her, weaving through tables and startled guests. Sierra panicked, turned, and walked quickly toward the kitchen, hoping to escape before this became a scene that would haunt both of them. She made it halfway across the mansion's grand dining room before he caught up with her. "Sierra, stop." His hand touched her elbow gently. "Please." She turned around, acutely aware of the eyes still watching them. Some guests had the decency to pretend they weren't staring, but others made no effort to hide their fascination. "This isn't the place," she said quietly. "Then where? You've been avoiding my calls for 2 days. I've been working here. You've been working here." His voice held a note of hurt confusion. "Why didn't you tell me? I would have understood. I worked service jobs all through college. I know—" "You know what?" The words came out sharper than she intended. "You know what it's like to serve champagne to people who treat you like you're invisible? You know what it's like to wear someone else's uniform and smile while they don't even acknowledge you exist?" Nathaniel flinched as if she'd slapped him. "Sierra, that's exactly what this is." She gestured around the opulent room at the guests who were still watching their drama unfold. "This is your world, Nathaniel. These are your people, and I'm the help. You're not the help." "I'm what?" Sierra's voice cracked. "I'm the woman you've been slumming with? The charity case who makes you feel good about your humble beginnings?" "Sierra, stop." His voice was pained. "You know that's not true." But the damage was done. Sierra could see it in his eyes. The moment he realized how this looked, how it would look to everyone who mattered in his professional world, the moment he understood that loving someone like her came with complications he hadn't considered. "I should get back to work," she said quietly, "before I get fired for fraternizing with the guests." She turned and walked toward the kitchen, her spine straight and her head high. Behind her, she could hear the murmur of conversations resuming, the clink of glasses, the string quartet playing on, and underneath it all the sound of something precious breaking beyond repair. In the kitchen, Sierra leaned against the steel prep counter and tried to breathe. She'd known this moment would come eventually, the moment when the fantasy collided with reality, when the fairy tale revealed itself to be just another story about a girl who'd forgotten her place. She just hoped it wouldn't hurt this much when it did. Sierra didn't go home after the gala. Instead, she sat on the steps of the closed public library, still wearing her catering uniform, watching Atlanta's late-night traffic blur past in streaks of red and white light. The $500 Helena had pressed into her hands felt heavy in her pocket, not nearly heavy enough to save them, but too much to ignore. Her phone had been buzzing for hours, Nathaniel's name appearing on the screen every few minutes like a heartbeat she couldn't silence. "Sierra, please let me explain. What happened tonight isn't what you think. I'm standing outside your building. I need to see you. I know you're angry, but please don't shut me out." She turned the phone face down and tried not to think about him standing on her street, probably drawing stares from the neighbors in his expensive tuxedo. She tried not to think about the hurt in his eyes when she'd walked away, or the way Vivian had looked at her like she was something stuck on the bottom of her designer shoe. Most of all, she tried not to think about how right it had felt. Those few seconds when their fingers touched over the champagne glass, before reality crashed back in. By the time she finally climbed the 3 flights to their apartment, it was almost 2 a.m. She expected to find Zara asleep, but light spilled from under the kitchen door. Her sister sat at the table with her laptop open, violin case beside her. On the screen, eBay listings for vintage violins, some with bids already climbing into the hundreds. "How much?" Sierra asked quietly. "There's a collector in Savannah who's interested. He offered $1,200. Zara's voice was steady, but her hands trembled slightly. "It's enough to stop the eviction and pay utilities for next month." Sierra sank into the chair across from her. $1,200. It was a miracle and a tragedy all at once. "Zara, I can't let you do this." You can't stop me either. I already told him yes. He's driving up tomorrow to look at it." They sat in silence, both staring at the laptop screen. The violin had been their mother's graduation gift from music school, a beautiful 1920s instrument, with a warm, rich tone that had filled their childhood with lullabies and folk songs and hope. "She would have understood," Zara said softly. "Mom always said music was about more than instruments. It was about what you do with the love." Sierra's throat tightened. "And what are we doing with it?" "We're surviving. That's what love does. It finds a way to keep the people who matter safe." The words hit harder than they should have. Sierra thought about Nathaniel's texts, about the way he'd looked at her tonight like she was something precious slipping through his fingers. What was love supposed to do when survival and happiness pulled in opposite directions? Her phone buzzed again. This time, it wasn't a text. It was a call. Nathaniel's name glowed on the screen like an accusation. Sierra stared at it for a long moment, then answered, "Hello?" Thank God. His voice was rough with exhaustion and something that might have been relief. "Sierra, please, I need to see you. I need to explain." "There's nothing to explain." She closed her eyes, trying to keep her voice steady. "I saw everything I needed to see tonight." "No, you didn't. You saw me in my world, but you didn't see how empty that world feels without you in it." "Nathaniel, stop. I left the gala. Right after you walked away, I left. Vivienne was furious. Helena was confused, but I didn't care. I've been driving around the city for hours trying to figure out how to fix this." Sierra felt something crack in her chest. "You can't fix this." "Why not?" "Because this isn't a business deal or a corporate merger. This is real life, and in real life, people like me don't get fairy tale endings with people like you. People like me." His voice rose slightly. "Sierra, you know where I came from. You know I wasn't born into this world. But you belong in it now. You've earned your place there." She looked around their cramped kitchen, at the bills scattered across the counter, at Zara's laptop still glowing with the violin listing. "I don't belong anywhere. You belong with me." The words hung in the air between them, beautiful and impossible. "No," Sierra whispered, "I don't. Tonight proved that. When push came to shove, when your world was watching, I was just the help. And maybe that's okay. Maybe that's all I was ever supposed to be." "Sierra, please don't do this. Don't walk away from something real because you're scared." "I'm not scared, I'm realistic. There's a difference." She could hear him breathing on the other end of the line, could almost see him running his hands through his hair, the way he did when he was frustrated. "What if I told you I love you?" he said quietly. The words hit her like a physical blow. She gripped the phone tighter, tears streaming down her face. "Then I'd say you love the idea of me. The woman you met in that lobby, the one who seemed mysterious and strong. But that woman was just an illusion, Nathaniel. The real me is sitting in a kitchen that needs new linoleum, watching my sister sell our mother's violin so we won't get evicted." Silence stretched between them. "What did you just say?" His voice had changed, become sharp with attention. Sierra realized what she'd let slip, the secret she'd been carrying, the weight that had been crushing her for days. In her exhaustion and heartbreak, the truth had tumbled out. "Nothing. I didn't say anything." "Sierra, are you being evicted?" "I have to go." "Answer me, are you losing your apartment?" "Nathaniel, please, how long have you been dealing with this alone? How long have you been carrying this while I've been taking you out for coffee and talking about how perfect my days are?" The anguish in his voice broke something inside her. "It doesn't matter now. It's the only thing that matters." "Sierra, why didn't you tell me?" "Because this is exactly what I was afraid of." The words came out in a rush. "Because I knew you'd want to fix it. And then I'd never know if you loved me or if you just felt sorry for me. Because I wanted to be someone worth loving, not someone who needed saving." "Oh, Sierra." His voice was gentle now, full of understanding that hurt worse than anger. "You are worth loving. You're worth everything." "No, I'm not. Not like this. Not when I can't even keep a roof over my sister's head." "Where are you right now?" "Home. I'm coming over." "Don't." The word came out sharper than she intended. "Nathaniel, don't come here, please." "Why not?" "Because if you show up at my door with your kind eyes and your solutions, I'll let you save me, and then I'll spend the rest of my life wondering if you stayed because you loved me, or because you felt obligated to the broken woman you rescued." The silence stretched longer this time. "And if I don't come?" he asked finally. Sierra looked at Zara, who was pretending not to listen but whose eyes were bright with unshed tears. She looked at the violin case, at the laptop screen, at the eviction notice still taped to their refrigerator. "Then we both get to keep our dignity," she said quietly. "Sierra," she hung up the phone and turned it off, setting it on the table like something that might explode. Zara reached across and took her hand. "You love him," she said. It wasn't a question. "Yeah," Sierra whispered. "I do, and he loves you. Maybe. But love isn't always enough, baby girl. Sometimes the kindest thing you can do is walk away before it gets complicated." Outside their window, Atlanta glittered with possibilities that belonged to other people. And in their small kitchen, two sisters held each other while one of them learned that sometimes the hardest part of loving someone was knowing when to let them go. Nathaniel sat in his car outside Sierra's apartment building until sunrise, staring at the third-floor window where he could see the faint glow of kitchen lights. He'd written and deleted a dozen texts. He'd gotten out of the car twice, making it halfway to the building entrance before turning back. Every instinct told him to march up those stairs, to fix this the way he fixed everything else in his life, with resources, determination, and the stubborn refusal to accept defeat. But Sierra's words echoed in his mind. If you show up at my door with your kind eyes and your solutions, I'll let you save me. And then I'll spend the rest of my life wondering if you stayed because you loved me or because you felt obligated to the broken woman you rescued. She was right, and that realization cut deeper than anything else. If he paid her rent, solved her problems, made her world easier, would she ever believe his love was real? Would he ever be sure it wasn't just his savior complex disguised as romance? As Atlanta woke up around him, Nathaniel finally understood what Sierra had been trying to protect. Not just her pride, but the purity of whatever they'd found together. She'd rather lose him than wonder forever if he'd stayed out of pity. It was the most heartbreaking kind of wisdom. 3 floors above, Sierra hadn't slept at all. She'd spent the night holding Zara while her sister cried over the violin, then staring at the ceiling while her own heart broke into smaller and smaller pieces. Every few minutes, she'd peek through the curtains and see Nathaniel's car still parked on the street below. A silent vigil that made everything hurt worse. When morning came, the collector from Savannah arrived right on schedule, a kind older man who handled the violin with the reverence it deserved. He examined every inch, tested the sound, and nodded approvingly. "Your mother had excellent taste," he told Zara gently. "This instrument has been well cared for." Zara could only nod, tears threatening to spill over. "I'll take good care of it," he promised, counting out $1,200 in crisp bills. "And who knows, maybe someday when circumstances are different we can talk about you visiting. I'd love to hear you play it again." After he left, Sierra and Zara sat in their empty living room, the space where the violin case used to sit, looking like a missing tooth. "I have to go to the bank," Sierra said finally. "Get a cashier's check for the landlord. I'll come with you. You don't have to." "Yes, I do." Zara's voice was steady now, stronger than it had been in days. "We're in this together, remember? Always have been." They walked to the bank hand in hand like they had when Zara was little, and the world felt too big and scary to navigate alone. The cashier's check felt heavy in Sierra's purse, heavier than money should feel, weighted with sacrifice and love and the kind of grace that came from letting go of precious things. Meanwhile, Nathaniel sat in his office, staring at his computer screen without seeing it. His assistant had rescheduled 3 meetings and fielded a dozen calls, but he couldn't focus on anything except the image of Sierra walking away from him in that mansion foyer. He'd built an empire by identifying problems and solving them. But this wasn't a problem. It was a person, with feelings and fears and a pride that ran deeper than his need to fix things. His phone rang. Helena Ashworth's name appeared on the caller ID. "Nathaniel, I hope you don't mind me calling directly." "Of course not, Helena. What can I do for you?" "Well, I wanted to check on you after last night. You seemed upset when you left the gala." Nathaniel closed his eyes. "I'm fine. I see. And the young woman you were speaking with? Sierra, I believe? She's one of my catering staff. Lovely girl, very professional. She seemed upset too." "Helena, I appreciate your concern, but you know, Nathaniel, I've been in this business a long time. I've seen a lot of powerful men make the mistake of thinking love is something they can manage, like a quarterly report." Her voice was gentle but firm. "Some things can't be fixed with money or influence. Sometimes the best thing you can do is simply be present and patient." "She doesn't want me to be present. She doesn't want my help. Maybe that's not what she needs right now. Maybe what she needs is to know that you'll still be there when she's ready to let you be." After Helena hung up, Nathaniel sat in the quiet of his office, city skyline stretching endlessly beyond his windows. He thought about Sierra's words, about the fear in her eyes when she'd looked at him across that gala crowd. He thought about dignity and pride and the way love sometimes meant stepping back instead of charging forward. And then he made a decision that went against every instinct he'd developed in 38 years of life. He was going to wait. That afternoon, Sierra delivered the cashier's check to the property management office with the solemnity of someone paying a ransom. The clerk processed it efficiently, stamping papers and updating files, oblivious to the weight of the transaction. "You're current through next month," she said briskly. "Just remember, rent's due by the 5th from now on. No more extensions." "Understood." Walking home, Sierra felt hollow. They'd bought themselves time, but at what cost? The violin was gone, Zara's connection to their mother severed, and Nathaniel, She couldn't think about Nathaniel without feeling like she was drowning. At home, Zara was cooking dinner, mac and cheese from a box, their celebration meal for crisis averted. It smelled like childhood and resilience and making do with what you had. "Any word from Prince Charming?" Zara asked, trying for lightness. "Don't call him that. Sorry." "Any word from the billionaire CEO who's madly in love with you?" Sierra shook her head. "I turned my phone off, remember? Maybe you should turn it back on." "Why? So I can read more messages about how he wants to fix everything? So I can torture myself with texts from someone who lives in a different universe?" Zara set down her wooden spoon and turned to face her sister fully. "Sierra, can I ask you something?" "Always." "Do you think Mom would have been proud of what we did today? Selling her violin to keep our home?" Sierra considered the question carefully. "I think Mom would have been proud that we chose to survive, that we found a way to stay together." "And do you think she would have been proud of you walking away from someone who loves you because you're scared of not being good enough?" The question hit like a slap. Sierra stared at her 15-year-old sister, who sometimes had the wisdom of someone 3 times her age. "That's different." "Is it? Because it seems to me like you're making the same choice, giving up something precious because you think it's the right thing to do." Before Sierra could respond, there was a soft knock at the door. Both sisters froze. "If that's him," Sierra started, "only one way to find out." Sierra opened the door to find Mrs. Patterson from down the hall, holding a covered dish and wearing the kind smile that had made her a favorite among all the building's children. "Evening, girls. I heard through the grapevine that you might be staying after all." "Yes, ma'am. We worked things out. I'm glad. This building wouldn't be the same without you two." She held out the dish. "I made too much lasagna. Thought you might enjoy some." "Mrs. Patterson, you didn't have to." "Nonsense. We look out for each other here. That's what neighbors do." As she turned to leave, she paused. "Oh, and Sierra? There's a young man been sitting in his car outside all day. Looks like he's waiting for something. You might want to check on him. It's getting cold out there." After Mrs. Patterson left, Sierra walked to the window and peered through the curtains. Nathaniel's car was still there, exactly where it had been since dawn. As she watched, she saw him in the driver's seat, still in his clothes from last night, looking up at her window like he was keeping vigil. "He's still there," she whispered. Zara joined her at the window. "He's been there all day?" "Since I hung up on him last night." "Sierra," Zara's voice was soft with understanding, "that man isn't trying to save you. He's just refusing to give up on you. There's a difference." Sierra's throat tightened as she watched Nathaniel in his car, this powerful man who ran boardrooms and commanded millions, sitting on a street corner in a neighborhood where his car cost more than most people's annual salary. He wasn't trying to fix her problems or sweep her away from her life. He was just there, waiting, patient, present, the way love looked when it was real. Sierra stood at her apartment door for 10 minutes, hand on the knob, heart hammering against her ribs. Through the window she could see Nathaniel still sitting in his car, shoulders hunched with exhaustion. He'd been there for over 24 hours now. No food, no change of clothes, just quiet persistence that spoke louder than any grand gesture ever could. "Go," Zara said softly from behind her, "before you lose your nerve again." "What if I hurt him more? What if I say the wrong thing? What if you say the right thing?" Zara squeezed her sister's shoulder. "What if you finally tell him the truth, all of it, and let him decide if he's strong enough to handle loving someone real instead of someone perfect?" Sierra closed her eyes, drawing strength from her sister's wisdom. Then she opened the door and stepped into the hallway, leaving her fears behind. The October evening air was crisp as Sierra crossed the street, her breath visible in small puffs. Nathaniel saw her coming in his rear-view mirror and slowly got out of the car, moving like a man who'd been sitting too long but wasn't sure he was welcome to stretch. They stood on opposite sides of the street, looking at each other across the distance that felt both infinite and non-existent. "You look terrible," Sierra said finally. "I feel terrible." His voice was hoarse. "But I feel worse when I'm not here. Nathaniel, you can't sit in your car on my street forever." "Can't I?" There was no humor in his smile. "Because I've been thinking about it for the past 6 hours, and I can't come up with a single reason why not." Sierra stepped closer, close enough to see the stubble on his jaw, the exhaustion in his eyes, the way his expensive shirt was wrinkled from sleeping in a car seat. "This is crazy," she whispered. "Is it? Because from where I'm standing, this is the sanest thing I've done in months." He took a careful step toward her. "Sierra, I need you to know something. I'm not here because I want to save you. I'm here because I can't imagine my life without you in it. You don't understand? I understand that you've been carrying impossible weight alone. I understand that you sold something precious to keep your home. I understand that you think accepting help makes you weak." His voice gentled. "What you don't understand is that watching you handle all of this with such grace and strength is the reason I fell in love with you in the first place." Tears burned behind Sierra's eyes. "I lied to you. About everything. About being okay. About having my life together. About being human?" Nathaniel stepped closer still. "About struggling with things that would break most people? About being scared and proud and protective of the people you love?" "Yes," she whispered. "Sierra, I don't want the version of you that has everything figured out. I want the version that drinks cold coffee because warm coffee costs extra. I want the woman who studies nursing textbooks during her lunch break because she believes in something bigger than herself. I want the sister who would do anything to protect Zara, even if it means breaking her own heart." The words hit her like gentle rain after a long drought. "But I have nothing to offer you. No money, no connections, no—" "You have everything to offer me," he interrupted. "You have kindness without calculation, strength without cruelty, beauty that doesn't need enhancement or validation." He reached out slowly, giving her time to pull away, and touched her face with fingers that trembled slightly. "You offer me the chance to love someone who sees past my bank account to who I actually am. And who are you actually? I'm the boy who ate cereal for dinner because that's all we had. I'm the man who works too much because he's still afraid of being poor. I'm someone who's been lonely in rooms full of people until he met a woman who makes him feel at home." His thumb brushed away a tear she didn't realize had fallen. "I'm someone who loves you, Sierra. Not because you need saving, but because you don't." The truth of it hit her like sunlight breaking through storm clouds. She could see it in his eyes. Not pity or obligation, but recognition. The way someone looked when they found their missing piece. "I'm scared," she admitted. "Of what?" "Of letting you love me. Of loving you back. Of this working out and changing everything. Of this not working out and losing everything." She laughed shakily. "Basically, I'm scared of everything." "That's okay, I'm scared too." "You are?" "Terrified. I've built companies, Sierra. I've negotiated deals worth millions. But I've never been in love with someone who could destroy me just by walking away." His smile was soft and vulnerable. "You have more power over me than any board of directors ever will." They stood in the growing darkness, breath mingling in the space between them, the weight of honesty making everything feel both fragile and unbreakable. "If we do this," Sierra said quietly, "if we try, it has to be real. No fairy tale endings, no knight in shining armor rescuing the poor girl. Just two people who've both fought hard for what they have, choosing to fight for each other. Is that what you want?" Sierra looked up at this man who'd sat in his car for 24 hours rather than pressure her into a decision, who'd understood her need for dignity even when it meant losing her, who saw her exhaustion and her strength as two sides of the same precious coin. "I want to try," she whispered. "I want to see what happens when two broken people decide to be broken together instead of broken apart." Nathaniel's smile was like sunrise after the longest night. "I love you, Sierra Bennett. I love your stubbornness and your pride, and your refusal to accept help until you're ready to receive it. I love that you make me want to be worthy of you every single day. I love you too," she said, the words feeling like coming home. "I love that you waited. I love that you saw me before you knew my story. I love that you're not trying to fix me because you don't think I'm broken." He leaned down, resting his forehead against hers. "We're going to figure this out together, okay? All of it. The practical stuff, the scary stuff, the beautiful stuff. Together. Together," she agreed. And when he kissed her there on the sidewalk, with Atlanta humming around them and Zara probably watching from the window above, it tasted like truth and hope, and the kind of love that didn't need rescuing because it was built on recognition instead of need. It tasted like coming home to a place she'd never been but had been searching for her entire life. From the apartment window above, Zara smiled and pulled the curtains closed, giving her sister and the man who'd waited all night the privacy they deserved. Some love stories, she thought, were worth waiting for, and some were worth fighting for. This one, she was pretty sure, was both. 2 years later, the graduation cap felt strange on Sierra's head as she walked across the stage at Atlanta Community College, but the weight of her nursing degree in her hands felt exactly right. In the audience, Nathaniel cheered louder than anyone else, his voice carrying over the polite applause of hundreds of families. Beside him, Zara, now 17 and still impossibly wise, grinned with the kind of pride that only a sister could feel. "Sierra Bennett, graduating summa cum laude with her associate degree in nursing," the announcer called out. As Sierra shook the dean's hand, she caught sight of her small cheering section and felt her heart swell with gratitude for the journey that had brought her here. Not the easy path she'd once dreamed of, but the real one, messy and complicated and more beautiful than any fairy tale. Later that evening, they celebrated at Magnolia's coffee shop, the same place where Sierra and Nathaniel had shared their first real conversation 2 years ago. The owner had reserved their original table by the window, complete with caramel macchiatos and the kind of pastries that had once seemed like impossible luxuries. "So, Nurse Bennett," Nathaniel said, raising his coffee mug in a toast. "How does it feel?" "Terrifying," Sierra laughed. "I start at Atlanta General next week, and I'm pretty sure I'm going to forget everything I learned the moment I see my first patient." "You won't," Zara said confidently. "You've been taking care of people your whole life. Now you just get paid for it." Sierra reached across the table and squeezed her sister's hand. Zara had flourished these past 2 years, not just academically, but emotionally. She was still the wise beyond her years girl, Sierra remembered, but now she was also just a teenager who got to be a teenager. She played violin in the school orchestra now, with an instrument they'd bought together. Not as beautiful as their mother's, but theirs in a way that mattered. "Speaking of taking care of people," Nathaniel said, his voice taking on a tone Sierra had learned to recognize as significant, "I have something for you." He pulled a small wrapped box from his jacket pocket, setting it on the table between them. Sierra's heart skipped. "Nathaniel, if this is what I think it is." "It's not," he said quickly, then grinned. "Well, not exactly. Open it." Inside the box was a key, old-fashioned brass, attached to a keychain shaped like a stethoscope. "I don't understand," Sierra said, though her heart was beginning to race. "Remember that conversation we had about your dreams, about wanting to open a community clinic someday, somewhere that people could get healthcare regardless of their ability to pay?" Sierra nodded, remembering the late-night conversation in his apartment when she'd shared dreams she'd barely admitted to herself. "Well, there's a building on the east side. Used to be a family practice, but the doctor retired last year. Perfect size, good location, already set up for medical services." Nathaniel's eyes were bright with excitement. "I bought it. For you, for us, for the clinic you're going to run someday." Sierra stared at the key, then at him, her mouth opening and closing without sound. "I know what you're thinking," he said quickly, "and before you start arguing about independence and accepting help, let me explain. This isn't charity, Sierra. This is an investment. In you, in your dream, in the community you're going to serve. I want to be your partner in this. Silent partner, if that's what you prefer. But I want to help you build something that matters." "Nathaniel," she whispered, tears threatening to spill over. "Besides," he added with that crooked smile she'd fallen in love with, "I figured if I'm going to marry you someday, I should probably support your dreams properly." The casual mention of marriage made Sierra's breath catch. "Someday, when you're ready, when the timing feels right. When you've had enough time to be Sierra Bennett, RN, before you decide if you want to be Sierra Dorian, RN." He reached across the table and took her hand. "I'm not going anywhere, Sierra. I told you that the night we figured out we were in this together. I meant it." Zara cleared her throat dramatically. "Should I leave you two alone for this mushy stuff?" "Stay," Sierra said, laughing through her tears. "You're part of this too. Everything we build together. All 3 of us." She looked around the table at her family, the one she'd been born into and the one she'd chosen. Zara, who'd grown from a scared 15-year-old into a confident teenager with college plans and violin dreams. Nathaniel, who'd learned that loving someone meant supporting their strength, not fixing their weaknesses. And herself, no longer the invisible woman who cleaned buildings in the early morning hours, Sierra Bennett, RN, soon-to-be clinic owner. Partner, sister, daughter of a mother who'd taught her that music was about love, and love was about finding ways to keep the people who mattered safe and happy. "So," Nathaniel said, squeezing her hand, "what do you say? Ready to change the world one patient at a time?" Sierra picked up the key, feeling its weight, not heavy like the burden she'd once carried alone, but substantial like promises kept and dreams within reach. "I say yes," she said, her voice strong and clear, "to all of it. The clinic, the future, the someday marriage proposal that wasn't quite a proposal." "It wasn't quite a proposal," Nathaniel agreed. "When I actually propose, you'll know. There will be ring and probably terrible nervous rambling. I look forward to the terrible nervous rambling. As they left Magnolia's that night, walking slowly through the Atlanta streets that had witnessed their beginning, Sierra reflected on the woman she'd been 2 years ago. Scared proud, carrying the weight of the world on shoulders that had learned to bear anything. She was still proud, but now it was the kind of pride that came from achievement rather than survival. She was still strong, but now it was strength shared rather than strength endured alone. And she was still the woman who noticed stray cats and treated security guards like human beings and studied textbooks during lunch breaks. But now she was also the woman who'd learned that accepting love didn't make you weak, it made you braver. As Nathaniel walked her to her car, she had her own now, nothing fancy but reliable, he stopped and turned to face her under the streetlight. I love you, Sierra Bennett. I love you too, Nathaniel Dorian. See you tomorrow. See you tomorrow. Some love stories, Sierra thought as she drove home to the small but comfortable apartment she now shared with Zara, in a better neighborhood, were about rescue and salvation. But the best ones, the ones that lasted, were about recognition and choice, and the daily decision to keep building something beautiful together. As she pulled into her parking space, Sierra smiled at the reflection in her rearview mirror. The woman looking back at her was tired. She'd always be tired, that came with caring deeply about things that mattered, but she was also hopeful. And sometimes, hope was the most beautiful thing of all. The end. Your participation in this story means everything to us. What moment in Sierra and Nathaniel's journey touched your heart the most? Have you ever had to choose between pride and love? What would you have done in Sierra's position? Please share your thoughts in the comments below. Your engagement is what makes these stories come alive. Thank you so much for watching until the end. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to subscribe to the channel, leave a like, and comment your thoughts. Your participation is very important to us. See you next time.